Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the mythology channel. Uh, uh, if my subscribers who probably realize right away I'm in unfamiliar surroundings. I'm actually in my family's house. My sister owns this house, and my parents live here too. And I've kind of moved in because sadly I'm on disability for the time being. November of 2021, I had a seizure at work, and they took me to the emergency room, and I had a CAT scan and an MRI, and they said, "Oh, we got news for you. You have a brain tumor." So it turns out it's a malignant brain tumor. They were able to tell that even before they took it out of me. But I had an operation where they cut me ear to ear. You can't tell now because it's completely healed, but it was a real mess. I had staples and stitches. It looks like I was in Reanimator or something. It looked like a zipper, and they cut you ear to ear, and they open up your scalp completely, and then they drill a hole in your skull, and it's a craniotomy, and then they go into the brain and they go to the area that has the tumor, and they take out the tumor, but because it's malignant. For those doctors out there, it's called astrocytoma, and it's a pretty serious malignancy. I don't think it's as bad as glioblastoma. That's usually the worst. And so what they did was, after I had the surgery, they it was in the right frontal lobe, which is actually, if you're going to have a tumor, that's actually not such a terrible place to have it, because it gives the doctors some wiggle room, to take the tumor out. Yeah, so I had to go through radiation therapy, and now I'm on chemotherapy. Chemotherapy seems to be working because every time I go for an MRI, it's always negative. So that's good. It shows there's no tumor growing back or anything. So, but the chemotherapy, unfortunately, is messing with my blood. So it's been knocking down my platelets. I had to go for an emergency blood transfusion for platelets several weeks ago. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, my white blood count dropped really low, which is really a serious problem, because if your white blood count drops, you're susceptible to all kinds of infections. So unfortunately, that's my story. So that's how come I haven't been doing any videos right now. I mean, I guess I could have still physically. I feel okay. It's just that I'm not surrounded by my books, so I don't I hold things up to show you. So, but I figured it might be therapeutic to make a little video to tell you my story, and also I have a couple of myths that have to do with things stuck in people's heads. The first story, I may have told in my video on Thor. It's Thor. How did Thor get a whetstone stuck in his head? What happens is that there was a giant, a very strong giant by the name of Hrungnir, and Thor doesn't like giants. Giants are the enemies of the gods. So Thor met him in battle, and Thor had his hammer, and the giant had a huge whetstone, and they met in battle, and the giant threw the whetstone, and Thor's hammer shattered in midair, shattered the whetstone, and it broke into 1,000 pieces. The hammer kept going, and it killed the giant instantly by bashing his head in. But one of the little pieces of whetstone actually embedded itself as shrapnel in Thor's head. I guess the gods don't rely on doctors. Thor went to a sorceress who uses spells to help you with medical issues. So she chanted a spell, and the whetstone started moving out of the head, and that was good. And but then what happens is that Thor distracted her by telling her a story, and then she couldn't recall the rest of the spell, and so the whetstone stayed in Thor's head. So he had to walk around with this little stone sticking out of his head. I don't know how far it stuck out. I don't know how ridiculous he looked. So So anyway, the story Thor told Groa, who was the sorceress, was about her husband. What happened is that he was a friend of Thor, and what happened is that he was traveling with Thor in a basket, and Thor was holding the basket and carrying him. And what happens is that his toe was sticking out of the basket, and because it was so cold, the toe probably developed something like frostbite or something. So Thor realized the toe was dead, so he snapped it off and he threw it up in the sky, and it became a star. And so Grower the sorceress, was very happy to hear that her husband's toe became a star in the sky, and because of that. It's a lesson learned. If you go to a sorcerer or sorceress, don't tell an exciting story until they're done with their spells. Otherwise, you might get stuck with an incomplete job. One of my other favorite myths, and I told this story in my video on Athena, was basically she was born completely as an adult, with her full regalia. As Athena, she had a suit of armor and an owl and a spear to show that she was the goddess of war and wisdom. And what happens is that the story begins where Zeus he was lusting after this. Before he married Hera, he had another wife. Her name was Metis, and she's got to do with intellectual things as well, intelligence. And there was a prophecy that Metis was going to give birth to a son that was going to depose Zeus from his throne, just like Zeus took his father Kronos off the throne and assumed control of the gods. And he didn't want that happening to him. So what he did was he swallowed Metis. And what happened while she was pregnant, but that didn't really totally give away the problem. What happens is that Zeus one day had this terrible headache, and he spoke to the wisest of the wiliest of the gods, Hermes, and Hermes went to Hephaestus and said, "Hey, you're a blacksmith. I guess that's the closest thing to a surgeon that the gods have. You're a blacksmith. Why don't you take your axe and split Zeus's head open and see what pops out that's giving him this headache?" And so Hephaestus, he's the god, he's the blacksmith god, a craftsmith, takes his axe and he hits Zeus on the head with it. Zeus's head breaks open, and he doesn't die because he's a god. They're immortal. And they're even more immortal than the Norse gods. The Norse gods, they're immortal too. But that's because they eat this apple that keeps them young. They could die a violent death. But not the Greek gods. They nothing can seem to kill them. So out from his head popped Athena, who symbolized the goddess of battle and wisdom, and also womanly handicrafts like spinning and weaving. But supposedly the ancient Greeks really liked Athena. That the Parthenon in Athens was dedicated to her because they didn't see her as a bloodthirsty war deity. She was seen as kind of like war only as a careful last step to keep the peace and defense. Well, if you look at the history of Greeks, they seem to like to fight a lot, like the Romans did. But because there was another god that the Greeks had. His name was Ares, and he was known more for the savagery of war. He seemed to like war. It's not so much Athena liked war. It was sort of like something that was sadly necessary at times to keep yourself protected and to keep yourself from invasion and other things. So two little stories I thought I'd give you, having to do with Sorry, I don't have any others. Just short video today. Just wanted to let you know that I'm still here, and when things get more back to normal, I'll be back home in my apartment with my bookcase behind me, and I'll have a series of books that you could read. This video, I don't know, I don't even know what to call yet. Brain surgery and related myths, maybe. I don't know. So until next time, I hope you're all doing better than me.